Welcome to the PitchVision Academy Cricket Show, your guide to better cricket. Doesn't matter who you are or where you are. We're here to help you out for a short while. Hopefully answer a couple of questions and get to the root of a few things. Who are we? Well, my name's David Hinchliffe. I look after things here. And helping me to help you, first of all, it's the Director of Cricket at Millfield School. It's Mark Garraway. Hello, Gareth. How's it going?
All very good. It's nice and sunny. I'm down at Tunbridge School this week. We've got a festival. I've got a bit of a Millfield licorice all sorts, called them this week. So I've got a few of our main team. I've got a lot of our youngest players. I've got some hockey players. I've got some rugby players. I've got some third 11 players, and they're doing their best to gel as a team. And it's been quite fun, I have to say. We've had a charity shop clothes buying escapade today for a dinner that we're going to tonight, and it's all good fun at the end of the school season, mate.
Fantastic. Getting stuck in and getting on with it, as you say, Gareth.
Yeah, correct. Tonight will be fairly entertaining looking at some of the threads that the boys have bought.
Secondly, it's the head of cricket performance at Portsmouth Grammar School. It's Sam Lavery. Hello, Lavers. How's it going?
Very well, thank you, David. Another beautiful day on the south coast.
Let's answer a couple of questions now. Questions that have been sent in by listeners to the show. And how this works is we pick out a couple of questions that we like from the ones that have been sent in this week. And then we pick a winner, which is an online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at pitchvision.com. For future shows, you can send your questions into us by emailing coach@pitchvision.com or getting in touch with us through social media, which we'll tell you about towards the end of the show. And the first person who's done that this week is Yuvraj. And Yuvraj says, I'm a fast bowler and I'm suffering from a shin bone injury. Now I'm back to full fitness. How do I restart my practice?
Carefully would be my first point, because I've never had shin injuries, but I've seen a couple of bowlers in particular that have had them. Andy Caddick used to suffer hugely from them, and he was in great deal of pain and would often find a way for himself to get through that. And I used to look at him and I'd be astounded, amazed, and in awe of him every day, because I could see how much pain he was in. So it's a nasty injury, and it's not an impact injury as such. It's nothing that anybody else can really equate to, because it doesn't happen to everybody. So it's a nasty one, and I wish you well when you come back. But I think really easing your way back in, as we know with most injuries, particularly when it comes to bowlers, they tend to come when we spike our workloads. And one of the challenges of coming back in is that you've had this period of time off, and that's quite frustrating, and your natural enthusiasm will often make you want to bowl and bowl and bowl and bowl when you come back in, but probably that is what you don't need to be doing. So think about your workloads, think about how you can graduate it. Don't try and do it all at once. Really spread that out and try and avoid those big spikes that backs and shins and knees often flare up against if you have that. So really manage your workloads would be my biggest thing on that. In terms of anything specific, I don't really have anything specific other than making sure that you're keeping the rest of your body in good nick, managing your workloads, maybe using some recovery techniques to flush stuff out of your system as good as possible, which is eating properly, sleeping properly, making sure you're hydrated. Caddy used to use ice baths at the end of the day for his legs to try and help that healing process, so maybe that's something you incorporate. But it's workload for me that is the biggest one when you come back from that injury, to avoid those spikes in particular, and then managing that through over the course of the next few weeks.
I guess, Lavers, it's sort of a matter of get started, see what happens, don't throw yourself in too heavily to start with, and then just gradually build yourself back up to where you were before, right?
Yeah, there's going to be an element of unknown, and after a period of time out, it's always tempting to just kind of throw yourself back in and try and hit the same intensity that you were at before you left, effectively. And it's just a very dangerous way to go. And obviously, we don't know the exact details of the situation of the injury, but it would always be a tentative return for me, just to make sure that one couple of months out or month out doesn't become 6 months out. And obviously there's a lot of frustration when you are away from the game and you do see your friends and your teammates playing and you want to be around that. but you've got to be aware that if you come back too quickly, then you could put yourself out for even longer. So it's about rebuilding the body, rebuilding its ability to cope with that action, getting some stress and some pressure put through that leg in particular, but also both legs, because both legs will have been away from bowling for a while, and as will the body will have been away from those bowling actions. And even if you've kept yourself gym fit to a degree, which is a useful thing to do, the strains and stresses of the bowling action are quite different to a lot of what most people would do in the gym. So easing your way in to those powerful movements again is something that you need to do, really, just to make sure your body's fully prepared. So when you do get to match day and you do feel you're ready to perform,
Because would you say there were any kind of
hopefully
specific
just as well
exercises to do, or would it be a matter of sort of doing the basics well again? Not necessarily doing anything specifically different, but sort of doing those basic things well that hopefully he would have been doing before he even got injured.
Yeah, well, you would be kind of revisiting what's caused the injury in the first place. So we obviously don't know the circumstances there and the actual scope of the injury, but you'd be revisiting why has this injury come around? Is this something that's within our control that can have an impact on it? Is it anything that's related to cricket or your physical training or something that we can have influence over? If there's nothing there and it's a separate incident that is unlikely to reoccur, then there's no impact you can have on that. Whereas if it's something that's as a result of something within the game or close to the game, then we've got to try and find a way of countering that. So that's something for you to know yourself, or with your own coach of what's brought it about. Apart from that, it's trying to make sure you do the things that you want to do well enough. It's a bit of an opportunity for someone in this situation who's had a break from the game to make sure you rebuild your action. Not necessarily in exactly the same way, but there's an opportunity to try and make a few amendments, because your automatic processes aren't going to be quite as automatic as they may have been prior to injury. There's an opportunity to just feed in some little technical changes if there are things you want to do as you're going through your redevelopment. So I would imagine there'll be a process, or I would recommend a process of transferring that usual reverse chain process of getting some walkthroughs done or some stationary drills done and making sure you're happy with the movement across that leg, and then feeding back into walking and jogging and running, etc., and then gradually increasing length of spell and intensity and that kind of thing, and that works very well hand in hand with technical changes if there are any you want to make. So it might be an opportunity to involve something along those lines as well, if you think there is anything that could be upgraded, as it were. So have a chat with your coach if you've got one, or have a think about anything that you might want to adapt along the way, and through that reloading process you might be able to change a few other things in different parts of the body or different parts of your action.
Next question is from Nastro, and Nastro says, if you've ever watched a match with younger cricketers, you'll know that extras are almost always the highest scorer. Does this mean more technical bowling in nets, or is there a better way to stop all the wides?
I think it's a great question, and it's one that I often have to deal with on a year-to-year basis with our younger sides in particular. And I think individually it can be about technique. I think you can see in bowlers, and certainly having kept wicket to a lot of bowlers over the years, you could tell the ones who would generally bowl wides, and often you tell which side they were going to bowl because of their technique. So hopefully, rather than letting somebody get to a point where they start bowling wides in matches, you've already done your analysis of your own bowling action or your team's bowling action using video camera to work out how they're aligned, which is often the biggest challenge when it comes to bowling wides. But I also think this is a mental thing. I also think this is a focus thing. And I'll give you an example of this. I remember playing a game out in India with a group of players, and it was a tight game. We lost by 1 wicket in the game, defending a score of 175, and we bowled 43 wides in that. So the next day that we played, we bowled 6 wides in the same, to the same regulations, to the same leg side wide approach. I asked the umpires to be tight. Now that isn't a technical thing. That is purely a group of young players making a bigger emphasis to get in and out of the over, because one of the things that we noticed at the start of the over and the end of the over were the most vulnerable times for wides. So there was a correlation and there was a trend developing. So we applied ourselves, got ourselves into the over, got ourselves out of the over, and the middle part of it tended to look after itself. We also made sure that we gave the bowlers a little option of having some mental triggers. So as they're walking back, they clear their head. As they turn around to at the start of their run-up, they've got a very clear idea of the ball that they're going to bowl, and then thirdly, they go about committing to it. And all of a sudden, we drop from 43 wides to 6 wides, and that's an example. But virtually every year, Millfield sides will get to the point where they start off bowling loads of wides, and within 2 or 3 games, because they get this mental focus right, they start to eradicate the wides and often go through games without actually having bowled one. So I think, yes, technique, but you should be working on that throughout the whole of the year with the cricketers. But I think once it comes to game time, it's about really getting them to manage their focus before they let go of each ball, because as soon as you do that, the number of wides will go down.
I know in Australia, Lavers, they've been experimenting with decreasing the size of the pitches in order to make it easier for the younger kids to get the ball up the other end without having to absolutely hoof it down there as hard as they can. And it's worked in that the number of wides has seemed to have gone down in those games. So do you think there is a case for, looking at the bigger picture and saying, well, let's make pitches smaller than they are at the moment, especially at the younger end?
Yeah, possibly. I quite like the idea of it, and not directly linking it to wides, but there are a few other elements I like of it. But from the wide perspective, you would say that if someone sets a ball off that's 5 degrees to the right or the left, obviously the shorter the pitch, the less distance it's going to be from the stumps when it comes to arriving. So from that perspective, it's obviously going to cut down the amount of wides that are bowled, and there's also less deviation through the air or off the pitch. So there's that lesser amount that's potentially out of their control. But the other things it brings in, I quite like that it encourages more proper shots. The ball will arrive at a greater pace more often. There will be subsequently more pace of the ball, so less requirement for people to really whack the ball all the time, and they can actually use the pace of the ball more. It opens up different parts of the pitch. There's more likelihood that the ball's going to be on the front foot a little bit more often and travelling quite flat, so they can hit straight down the ground. But also, if someone does go back of a length, there's potential for a younger cricketer to bowl something that looks something like a bouncer if need be, and it's hopefully going to encourage not just the kind of open up pull shot off the back foot, but a bit of back foot defence and potentially a few straight back shots off the back foot as well. So as long as the graduation through from that shorter pitch is appropriate to take people up to 22 yards in the end, I think there are definitely merits in it. You may even find that it creates different methods of dismissal as well because of the trajectory of the ball being bowled. So I think there are potentially a lot of merits in it. And from the wide point of view, it's obviously retaining the same angles but shortening the pitch is going to mean less wides are bowled because the ball's not quite so far from the stumps. I
guess that's the question, isn't it? If we know that there's fewer wides bowled on shorter pitches, the next question is how will that affect a player's progression from whatever length pitch it is up to the full 22 eventually? Do you know anything about that, Gareth? Is that something that you've mulled over?
I think the adaptation is made fairly simple, actually. If you think about that adaptation from 20-yard pitches to 22-yard pitches, it often happens, certainly in our country, it happens as they graduate from prep school, under 13 to under 14 cricket. That adaptation happens pretty naturally because it often coincides with growth spurts and what have you. So I think that adaptation won't be too much of a challenge, to be honest with you. I think it's a brilliant initiative. I'm a big fan of it, and the things that excites me is that it would expose younger players to being able to face faster bowling earlier and develop some good techniques around that. It will give young bowlers the opportunity to try different balls, encourage them to bowl faster. And I think probably in our game in England at the moment, the thing that we struggle with more than anything is the ability to develop spin bowlers. and spin bowlers from a young age. And I think it would be fantastic for spin bowlers because they will use their action to propel the ball, but their fingers and their wrists to spin the ball, whereas at the moment they're using every little bit of themselves to try and propel the ball down the other end. So it would be quite exciting to see how a shortened pitch and a gradually elongating pitch will impact the development of our spin bowlers in particular over the course of the next 10 or 15 years. So I'm well up for it, and often these kids they adapt much better than us adults would perceive them to. So it would be less of a problem for me on that one, and certainly as a coach I wouldn't be expecting to have to deal too often with people moaning about having different lengths of pitches and adapting to that. I would suggest that would be a limited belief that we need to get over very, very quickly.
And that is just about all we've got time for on the show this week. Just before we leave, we do need to decide one thing, which is the winner of this week's competition. The online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at PitchVision.com, of course, is up for grabs. We had two questions. You've raised this question about his shin injury, and Nastro's question about young cricketers bowling wides. Which one did you prefer this week, Gareth?
Two good questions, but I'm going to go with the one about wides because it's something that we see a lot of, and to me, as much as the technical stuff is something that we're working on solidly, I think the crucial thing is getting that focus and getting people to really understand what their concentrations need to be at key times during the bowling over really, and I like that. I think it's something that everybody can benefit from.
Congratulations to you, and Gareth, if there were other people listening to the show, which I'm sure there are, and they want to have their question answered and possibly even win that prize, how could someone get in touch with the show?
They could give us a call on 0203 239 7543 or drop us an email on coach@pitchvision.com.
That's correct. You can also get it through social media. Of course, the messaging system at pitchvision.com is up and running, so you can send us a message. We're PitchVision Academy on pitchvision.com over there, so start following us, send us a message, and we'll get that. If you want to get us through any other social media platform, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/PitchVision Academy, and we're also on Twitter at PitchVision Acad. If it's a short question, you can get that over to us. You can listen to the show every week by subscribing. That's free. You can do it by going to your favourite podcast app and doing a search for PitchVision Academy. You'll find us in there. Tap on subscribe. It comes out every Friday. And if you want to get the show through the website, then you can do that as well. You can stream it, get all the old show notes, find all the old shows, download the shows, do whatever you like over there, as well as get all the PitchVision articles which go up every single day. That's easy to do. Go over to pitchvision.com/academy and click on the podcast link. That's all for this week. We hope you listen next week, but until then, have a good week. Cheers, Gareth. Cheers, Lavers.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers, guys.